So good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the EIT Food Future of Food Conference 2020. We're going to be getting started with the conference properly in about 5 minutes or so. But before we did, as you will definitely have noticed, the format of this conference this year is a little bit different to previous years, with us holding the event virtually. So just before we started, I was just going to give you a quick run through of the platform to show you some of the different areas of the platform and really to hopefully enable you to make the most of your time with us during the event. I should start first of all by introducing myself. So my name is Dan Kraft. I'm from Forum Europe, and we're delighted to have been working with EIT Food on the conference this year. So as I said, I just wanted to give you a very brief run through of the platform that we're going to be using for the conference and some of the different features that you'll be able to take advantage of during your time with us over the course of the next few days. So here we are. Here we have the platform. This is the platform. This is the page that you will have hopefully arrived at when you first clicked on your link and came into the main event. So you'll see this is the reception page. This is the main reception page for the event. The most important thing on here, you'll find information and things about the conference here. And crucially, you will find the full program and details of all the speakers at the bottom of this page. So you can view all of the program, including the different breakout sessions that are taking place, and of course, the program for tomorrow as well, using the schedule area at the bottom of the screen. Now, we've designed the platform for this event to be a little bit more involved than the standard kind of webinar platform. So as well as the different areas that you can go to view the sessions themselves, we also have networking areas, exhibition areas, and places that you can actually see who's attending and even create one-to-one meetings with different people. So just to show you a little bit about that, the two menu bars that you can use to navigate through the platform are the ones here on the left-hand side of your screen and over here on the right-hand side. So first of all, to work down the left-hand side, the stages area, first of all. Hopefully you found this area already, because if you haven't, then you wouldn't be able to watch me now. So you obviously have found this area. So this is the area where all of the different sessions will take place. You have the main stage at the top, where the plenary sessions will take place. And then on both days, we have a series of breakout sessions, and you can find the stages for the different breakout sessions there as well. Click on each of those stages, and that will take you through to the proceedings that are happening live on the area there. Next up, we have the networking area. So during the program, there are specific times which have been dedicated to networking. When we have those networking times, we do invite you to click on the networking button here, and then to click on the ready button. If you click on that, that will then randomly match you with another participant who is on the platform. So it's an opportunity to meet with them, to have a quick chat. You have about 3 minutes. It's a bit of a speed networking, so you have about 3 minutes or so. Chance to have a chat with them, and then if you wanted to, you can exchange business cards. So you can actually virtually exchange business cards there. And the final area down here is the expo area. So please do make sure during your time at the event that you do have a look at the expo area. So you can see there's 3 exhibition stands we have here, and you can feel free to browse that. You have videos running, you have presentations, links to click on as well. So please do make sure you use that during your time with us. Very quickly, to move over onto the right-hand side of the screen. So this is the more interactive part of the platform. So first of all, you have the event chat. So you can view the chat. You can put your comments here. Any questions you have, you can put here as well. So yeah, sorry, that's actually a key point. Any questions that you have for the speakers during the sessions, please do put them on the chat area here, and they will then be passed over to the speakers during the sessions and addressed by our speakers during the session. So please make sure you're making use of that. Secondly, I wanted to show you the People tab here. So this is a list of all of the people who are registered for the event. So you can go on here, you can search for people, you can have a look and see who is attending. Now we do have, I think, more than 1,200 people registered. So you can easily browse through the people who are registered here and see exactly who's attending. And even more, what you can do once you've found people on here, maybe you wanted to connect to someone who is attending the event, you can click on that person. You can invite them to a video call. So you can use the button here to create a private one-to-one video meeting. If you then click on that button there, that will then open up a window which hopefully, if this works, will connect me to the person, Charlene, my colleague, who I asked to connect with there. So as you can see, I'm now connected with Charlene, and we can create meeting rooms where you can have one-to-one meetings live during the event and as part of the event. So it's another way to network with participants there. So that's very briefly a quick run through the platform and how all that is working. So I hope that was useful. I'm sure that as you use the platform over the course of the next 2 days, things will become more obvious, and you'll find your way around there. And please do, if you have any problems or any questions at all regarding the platform, please do not hesitate to contact either myself or any of my colleagues who you can find in the People tab on the right-hand side, and we'd be happy to help with any questions that you do have. So I think we better get started with the event properly then. So once again, a big welcome to all of you, and I would like to now pass over to Andy Zynga, CEO of EIT Food. So Andy is going to be welcoming everybody and introducing our keynote speakers. So Andy, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dan, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the second edition of our Future of Food conference. This conference is an annual opportunity to shape the future of food through innovation and policy. What are the challenges and opportunities ahead of us, and how can we work together to reach impact goals, and specifically the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the EU Farm to Fork strategy? The COVID-19 pandemic is causing a lot of suffering to people all over the world. The strict but very necessary measures to contain the spread of the virus are hurting our society, our culture, and our economy in all sectors. The agri-food sector is no exception, and this is something that we will discuss in one of the sessions we are hosting tomorrow, where Professor Grunert from Aarhus University will present the results of a study on how the pandemic has influenced consumer behavior in food. Having a virtual event like this enables us to connect with many people who are following us from abroad. About 1,200 people registered to the event, and more than 900 of them are based outside Belgium, and a great many are from outside of Europe. Today, we will start with a session dedicated to the EU Farm to Fork strategy and the role of consumers in it. With the introduction of that strategy 6 months ago, policymakers acknowledged that the future of food is dependent, now more than ever, on innovative solutions that can help us meet the ambitious targets set out by the strategy. The debate that we will have to have with you will focus on the how question. How do we meet those targets? How do we achieve the transition to a more sustainable food system? The Farm to Fork strategy is the framework, but now we need to fill this frame with actions. Innovation is a large part of the answer. If done right, it can be a positive, disruptive force that brings change. Best realized through a combination of agri-food sector practices and policy interventions, as well as market pull based on consumer trends, choices, and preferences. Innovation can empower consumers to make sustainable and healthy choices, just as the Farm to Fork strategy recognizes. But how are we going to mobilize the great forces of consumer choice and behavior to help Europe achieve this transformation, while at the same time catering for the needs of all the players in the value chain, starting with the farmers? Let me share 3 recommendations which might inspire the debates which will follow in the conference. Firstly, policymakers and industry professionals must place consumers at the heart of innovation strategies moving forward and not leave them at the margins. This means consumers need to have a place in our innovation ecosystems and in our research and innovation projects. Horizon Europe encourages researchers to do so, but we're still very far from a proper rethink of the innovation process around the needs of consumers. We need to redesign R&I activities so as to build opportunities for co-creation with consumers. Secondly, consumer information is key. Prices are good pieces of information, but today this is not enough. The agri-food industry is expected to deliver a higher level of transparency. We need solutions to capture information along the entire value chain and make it available to consumers. This will help us to achieve a higher level of consumer trust. Technology can be of great help here, and we see considerable potential for the application of blockchain and AI in this field. We also need to find ways to inform consumers about the environmental and carbon footprint of a product, helping them to understand the process of the product's creation and appreciate its value, not only for the economy, but also for society and the environment. We will discuss these topics in one of the breakout sessions today, and to set the scene, we will also hear about the importance of trust and what drives consumer trust. Thirdly, affordability remains a key concern, especially in the current economic context. The challenge is to reconcile the need for an affordable price with the need for a fair reward for those who produce the food, starting especially with the farmers. The interests of consumers and farmers should in actual fact go hand in hand, not against one another. We are eager to discuss with you how we can better support farmers embrace the transformation of the food system. Commissioner Wojciechowski will address this point in his opening speech. One of the breakout sessions of this morning will look at the provisions of skills to farmers and other key conditions to enable them to deliver on the farm-to-fork strategy. Before giving the floor to the commissioner, however, we will meet with an excellent innovation expert who will talk to us about the mission and role of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, or EIT for short, and why the EIT is particularly well suited to help Europe solve big challenges such as those set out by the EU Farm-to-Fork strategy. The expert, of course, is no other than Gioia Ghezzi, the chairperson of the EIT. Besides the EIT, Gioia is also active in a number of additional important boards and is a member of the scientific committee of the Italian Industry Federation, Confindustria. Her career includes roles such as group chair of Ferrovie dello Stato Italiane for 3 years and CEO of a group company of Zurich Insurance Group, as well as over 11 years with McKinsey & Company as a partner in their London office. Gioia earned a degree in theoretical physics at the University of Milan and an MBA from London Business School. After her introductory speech, I will go ahead and ask Gioia a few questions. Gioia, please share some thoughts with our audience. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here with you. The format of this conference in this pandemic year makes perhaps it harder to follow the discussions for a whole day, but I would encourage you to really exploit all the features of these platforms to interact and discuss the topic of food. In Europe, we've come to take food for granted. And the COVID pandemic made us suddenly realize that it isn't. That there are a number of weaknesses in the value chain, in the logistics, and that we do need to continuously innovate and think how to change and improve the way we bring food on the table, from the farms. It is a very complex mechanism that does need to change for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the sustainability imperative and the need that we all feel as consumers to eat something that we trust is good for us is fair, as Andy just said, to everyone who contributed to bring it to our tables, and that does not damage the environment, or even better, improves it. This is actually an enormous challenge. The food industry, even more than other industries, is still very fragmented. And it does require an enormous effort, both of innovation and of scale-up of innovation to get there. The European Institute of Innovation and Technology is extremely proud to have foreseen this challenge years ago now, and to have invested, Europe has invested in this issue for a number of years. What do? We bring innovation forward by creating ecosystems. The European Institute of Technology is already the biggest innovation ecosystem that exists in Europe. We do that, we scale up innovation by bringing together education, entrepreneurial skills, research, and industry, business. And through that, we have a very proven model that scales up innovation across Europe. Well, now more than ever, as the COVID has shown to us all, we need to multiply our efforts to ensure that we have impact. A lot of the technologies are already there, but they are not commercialized, distributed, implemented at scale to really have a step change in the way we go from farm to fork. So this is what we will be discussing over the next couple of days, and I'm very, very excited that the EIT Food Kick has organized this two-day event, which I think is very much needed. So I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Gioia. Really appreciate your opening remarks. Just a few questions for you, if I may. So first of all, we are at the end of an intense period of discussions and negotiations on the future of the EIT itself. How can the strengthened EIT model introduced by the new regulation and the strategic innovation agenda that's just been passed help us shape the future of food and contribute to key EU priorities such as the farm to fork strategy?
Well, in a number of ways, I think. First and foremost, the EIT has existed now for 10 years. And over these 10 years, we have experimented with different models to trigger and scale up innovation. Now we know how to do that. We know what works and what doesn't. So the next 10 years will be the years of impact and delivery, and accelerated impact and delivery. We will be ever more connected in bringing together a number of challenges. The EIT, as you know, Andy, but just for the audience, is active in the field of food, but obviously in many other fields as well. For example, we are very active in climate change. We are very active in digital. We are very active in healthcare. These are all topics that are very close to the topic of food, because we need to decrease very, very fast the carbon footprint of the food value chain. We need for that, a digital a digitalization of the industry, starting in agriculture, we do need to ensure that what we eat is healthy, and so on and so forth. So in the discussions at the Commission, there is enormous focus with the new Green Deal on all of the topics I mentioned, and this will help us to have more impact on food. We will also be able to plan better, to plan over several years, and therefore, pace ourselves in effecting change.
Thank you, Gioia. It'll definitely be a very exciting and suspense-filled 10 years coming up now. So thank you for your insights on this. The second question I'm going to ask is, thinking about the challenges of the future of food, such as the green and digital transition, what do you think are the education needs that the EIT can help to address with its model and its strong focus on entrepreneurial education specifically?
Yeah, it's an enormous challenge. First of all, because particularly on the agricultural side, but not exclusively, there is immense fragmentation. So I think that we need to act collectively in two ways. One, we need more entrepreneurs that are able to bring innovation to every step of the value chain on one side. On the other, we need, again, collectively as an industry, to bring the education down to every single worker in this value chain, which is an enormous effort. But it can be done if we all play our part. The very big companies, the very innovative partners that you have in universities, in schools, all along the value chain. So twofold, we need to scale up innovations. Often we do have the ideas, but their commercialization, their expansion, their arrival to the place where they could really make a difference is impaired. That's where we need to act, and we need more, quite simply, more entrepreneurs all across Europe, all along the food value chain. I repeat, in the agriculture, in the logistics of it, in the industry, the processing industry, and in distribution. If we go on doing things the way we've done things up to now, we will get the same results. We do not want the same results. We want more sustainable food. Equally, we want it affordable, as you said, and healthy. So something has to change, or perhaps plenty of things have to change.
Thank you, Gioia. Certainly a call to action to both innovators and policymakers, by the sound of it. Now, last question. What is your advice to EIT Food and its partners, including also, of course, our community of startups and scale-ups, to attract investments in order to step up those solutions for the food system and to ensure financial sustainability of our projects in the longer term?
Well, the EIT Food is there to help, obviously. In what way? It's the networking, network. It's bringing together the investments. It's the scouting for the most promising innovative ideas and startups. it's the help, as I mentioned before, in commercializing these ideas. If you do much ambitious new startups or small companies with the power of our partners network in EIT Food, but also in the other activities that the EIT does have, as I was mentioning, in digital, in climate change, in healthcare, and so on and so forth, we can really support the innovative startups in commercializing, in scaling up, in being in their products and services being adopted much faster. So I think that the trick is really the strengthening of collaboration with private sector players that do play, a crucial role here.
Thank you, Gioia. It's a really great point about networking and collaboration, which of course we fully embrace. We work and collaborate with many organizations, including other KICs here within the EIT family of KICs, but also with other organizations from around the world. So nobody can do this alone, right? And that's exactly right. That's what attracts the investments. Thank you so much, Gioia. Always really great to get your insights. Thank you so much again.
Have a good conference.
Thank you. Now, it is time for a keynote message by Janusz Wojciechowski, the European Commissioner for Agriculture.
Ladies and gentlemen, food production clearly is and will always be a strategic priority. Indeed, it is part of the Sustainable Development Goals. That is why I'm very happy to address you this morning as a European Commission for Agriculture. The COVID pandemic has confirmed how important it is to ensure that all citizens have access to safe and affordable food at all times without interruptions. For this reason, it is very important for the European continent to maintain farming throughout its territory, in particular in the form of family farms. This will ensure food production in a resilient way and maintain the fabric of our rural societies. And obviously, the future of food depends on the future of farmers. We need to ensure that farms do not disappear and farmers continue to make a decent living. The COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated the advantages of shorter production chains and the need to secure closer ties between producers, processors, and consumers. Minimizing long-haul transport, investing in local processing, advancing animal welfare, promoting sustainable and local agriculture, these are some of my priorities. Europe's food systems are among the most efficient globally. We should recognize the years of effort that have brought tangible results, such as reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and the use of antimicrobials. But a much higher ambition is necessary to achieve the common goals outlined in the European Green Deal, namely reaching climate neutrality in 2050 while protecting and restoring biodiversity. The Green Deal's ambitions have been articulated in a new vision for the future of the European food system, the Farm to Fork strategy. The publication of this strategy in May marked the start of a long process to translate our broad and ambitious goals into specific initiatives. Many individual legislative proposals will be published in the coming years. The complexity of the food system means there is no single miracle solution to improving sustainability. We need action throughout the food system, and our initiatives will aim to support, regulate, guide, and nudge along the way. To make the most of the transition, everyone will need to contribute. The challenge is not only for farmers, but also for food processors, retailers, consumers, and indeed the research community. I cannot stress enough the importance of research and innovation to tackle the challenges we face, including education and skills. Education and skills are key in helping our farmers to make farming sustainable and successfully implement our farm-to-fork strategy. Research and innovation are key for improving the circularity of our food systems. They are also key for reducing food loss and waste and for understanding consumer behavior. Finally, innovation will be crucial to help us develop alternative proteins and more sustainable farming practices. Let me highlight in this regard the proposed research mission for the soil health and food, as well as the Horizon Europe partnerships. These initiatives are a good illustration of how the Commission expects to reinforce the links between research and specific policy areas, therefore increasing the impact of research. I call on you to participate in those initiatives and help us develop the necessary solutions around farmers' needs. Ladies and gentlemen, our common agriculture policy will be an important lever to bring about this transition. This is why the ongoing reform of this policy is so important. Our proposal in the new CAP for eco-schemes and agro-environmental measures will play a key role in promoting a transition to more sustainable farming. An important step has been made by the European Council in July. EU leaders brokered an agreement on the new EU budget for the next 7 years, which is favorable to agriculture as a whole and which recognizes its strategic role in Europe. One of the 10th of November, we started the political trialogues with the European Parliament and Member States to find an agreement on the reform of the Common Agriculture Policy. Our ambitious Horizon Europe package will also be an important part of the European Green Deal. We are only just starting our work. If we act together, we can deliver on the targets we committed to as part of Farm to Fork. I wish you a successful conference.
A great big thank you to the Commissioner for his insightful message. It is an honor for us to have his input into the conference. Now, EIT Food stands ready to answer his call for action and help the Commission find solutions which will support the implementation of the Farm to Fork strategy. You may know that sustainable agriculture is one of the 6 key innovation focus areas into which we will invest considerable resources in the next few years. Many of our partners are very active in this field, not only in EIT Food, but also in other Horizon 2020 projects and partnerships, and also in the future Horizon Europe mission. Within this, as mentioned earlier, bringing consumers and farmers closer together is one of the key goals of our work. Now, let me welcome another important person, namely Paul Adamson, the chairman of Forum Europe. Paul graciously agreed to be our moderator of this first day of the conference. Enjoy the day and see you all later.
Thank you, Andy, for that very kind and warm introduction. Yes, it's my very pleasant task to be the moderator of the Day 1's plenary session. And within that, my first very pleasant task is introduce Sophie Hika, who's head of consumer science at UFIC, the European Food Information Council, who will make a presentation for us on do European consumers trust their food? So without further ado, over to you, Sophie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. And thanks a lot for having me today at this conference. My name is Sophie Hicke. I am the head of the Consumer Science Department at UFIC, but I also am a professor for marketing at the Munich Business School. And I'm here today to introduce you to the Trust Tracker tool. This is an initiative that we developed within EIT Foods by a team of multidisciplinary researchers across Europe. Before we get started, what's our rationale to look at trust in the food value chain? Well, we know from different disciplines, including psychology, that trust can have far-reaching behavioral consequences. And they can range from approach to avoidance, meaning trust can make you do something or it can stop you from doing that very thing. Next slide, please. Now, if we want to understand the formation of consumer trust in the food system, because we presume that they can possibly influence consumer behavior, more specifically, whether people choose certain foods or not, we have to take into account the complexity of the entire value chain. This is why we look at the main actors instead of oversimplifying consumer trust into the food value chain as a whole. Next slide, please. Working with existing literature from various disciplines, we've also included the latest insights from consumer neuroscience. We've developed a model that allows us to basically do two things. First, explain the formation of consumer trust in the food value chain. And of course, if you apply this over several years, you can monitor those trust levels. And second, understand the role of trust in consumer behavior. So essentially, if you look at the model here on the slide, the top part is looking at how trust is formed, and the bottom part is looking at the role of trust in consumer behavior. So far, we've successfully validated the top part of the model, and we've published the results in the journal Food Policy. By the way, it's an open access article. It means that you can download it free of charge, for one, because we believe in open science, but also because we hope that this model is eventually going to become the standard tool to measure and monitor consumer trust in food. We're currently working on the second publication, where we will validate the bottom part of the model, showing, and we already know we can, that indeed trust impacts consumer behavior. So stay tuned. Next slide, please. One of the core results from validating our model is that we can successfully show over the course of 3 years now that when consumers trust the actors in the food value chain, they are more confident in the integrity of their food. What does food integrity actually mean? It covers 5 dimensions. So it basically looks at the taste, the safety, the health, the authenticity, and the sustainability of food. So for example, when consumers have more trust in their food system, they are more confident that their food is tasty or safe. Next slide, please. So how do we get here? We started out back in 2015, and we really took some time to understand the existing literature around the concept of trust. We looked at it from all angles and disciplines. We looked at all the available empirical research out there until we arrived at a model, the one you just saw in the previous slide, that we were confident in. So in 2018, we actually ran our first wave of data collection in 5 European countries on actually 5,000 consumers. And with this data, we validated our model. We then continued our data collection with 13 EU countries in 2019 on actually a total of 11,000 consumers, all the way up to 18 European countries this year in 2020 on a total of 20,000 consumers. Of course, there's going to be another wave of data collection next year, but we will also further develop our tool because we want to ensure we can measure additional aspects such as trust in brands, specific foods, but also food technologies. And we're working on the next scientific publication to validate the bottom part of our model. We can already safely say that we can show trust to strengthen the bond between what consumers think they want and what they actually intend to do. So basically, to a certain extent, trust can help us close this famous attitude behavior gap by intensifying this positive relationship. Let me give you a quick example to make this a bit more comprehensible. Our data show that consumers who are motivated to live a sustainable life are more likely to choose sustainable foods. Attitude, behavior. And now, interestingly, this link, this attitude behavior link, gets stronger when trust is high. But enough of the model and our work so far. I think it's time that I take you on a little bit of a helicopter tour through some of our most current results. So next slide, please. Let's get started with overall trust. Now, while it's not 100% accurate to simply compare data across the years like we've done here, because we have very different sample sizes. Remember, we went from 5 to 13 to 18 countries. We did still want to show you a trend we've been observing in our data. Trust in the food system has actually slightly gone up by 2020. And yes, we did survey after the pandemic had started. Obviously, we've done the necessary calculations to ensure that we can safely make this assumption. Don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with the details for now. Just know we can observe an increase in consumer trust in the European food value chain. Next slide, please. We do have another interesting trend to share with you. Consumers' confidence in their food integrity has also gone up slightly over the past 3 years. The way I'm comparing the data on the slide, it may not necessarily look like it, which is due to the different countries and the 3-year samples and so on. But when we compared the same countries across the years, we do find this slight increase in consumer confidence. Overall, across all the years, and in fact also across all the countries, European consumers tend to be most confident that their foods are tasty. So taste comes out on top. This is followed by confidence in food safety, which I think is a great result, right? The healthiness of food comes in thirds, followed by authenticity and sustainability. Now, this obviously calls for much speculation, and be sure that we will continue to analyze these results in more detail. But for now, I wanted to leave you with one thing that we observe, and that's basically the more nebulous these concepts become, meaning consumers are less able to experience these dimensions like authenticity, sustainability, the more their confidence goes down. So we're basically right back at the start. The reality is consumers have to do a lot of trusting when it comes to their food, because many of the things that they value in their food has to do with concepts that they can't see, touch, taste, or feel. Next slide, please. Now, if you're interested, just a sneak peek, here's an overview of consumer confidence in total across 18 years for this year's data that we collected. You can see a really nice range of confidence levels. You can, for instance, see that UK consumers and Finnish consumers come out on top and are most confident, and apparently Czech consumers are least. So this is just a sneak peek, so we can already move on to the next slide, please. Let me leave you with the last teaser for what's to come. We have included measures in our tool on consumer motivation and intention. So think back to this attitude behavior gap, right? Basically, we're measuring how motivated they are to live a healthy and or sustainable life, and how intent they are on actually following through with healthy and sustainable food choices. What we see so far is motivation is currently highest for a sustainable life, and I think that that's fantastic news. But when it comes down to what people realistically think they will be able to transform into actual day-to-day behavior, it's health over sustainability. This isn't new, right? We know from research that concern for sustainability doesn't yet really translate into the corresponding behavior. But thanks to the Consumer Trust Tracker, we are now one step closer to closing that loop by understanding what makes consumers more likely to make sustainable food choices. Next slide, please. For now, I'd like to thank you very much for listening in today. Please do visit our website, eitfood.eu/trusttracker, pretty easy, for updates. We're also sharing materials, we're sharing links to our publications, and do contact us if you have any questions. Next slide, please. We hope you found this short and maybe even a little bit wild ride into the world of trust useful, and we thank you very much for your attention on behalf of my colleagues from the University of Reading, Aarhus University, KU Leuven, Warsaw University, and UFIC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie. That was really fascinating. I have many questions to ask you, but unfortunately we haven't got that much time. But I have a couple, if I may, before we move on to the panel. So this concept of integrity, food integrity, tasty, safe, healthy, authentic, and sustainable. Is there any recognition or appreciation that there may have to be trade-offs between those 5 elements? In other words, people can expect to have all 5 at the same time without having to make any kind of concessions in effect.
That's an excellent question. We're not measuring whether whether there is a trade-off or whether people have to exchange one for the other. We're just asking how people see their food and how they look at the food. I think that there is a lot of debate on whether people feel that they have to make trade-offs, but I think the most interesting probably is that we used to look at the silo. We used to look at only healthy diets, big topic for a long time now. Now we've started looking at sustainable diets or sustainable foods, and we're only recently, slowly through this food systems approach, coming to a point where we're saying, well, we have to combine those two. We want to have a diet that's healthy and sustainable. We want to have foods that are healthy and sustainable because of production, because of their content, their ingredients, etc. So I think the silo thinking on our end is probably even much more detrimental. We need to make sure that consumers feel like those things are not mutually exclusive. They can have it all.
Okay, it just strikes me that also it's obviously a very good thing that consumers are empowered, they are well informed, and they know what they want to buy. But it strikes me also, if you were to add in maybe 2 more elements of your 5 points, like affordability and variety, it's one thing for consumers to be empowered and to be very knowledgeable of what they want, but also they have very high expectations, sometimes maybe unreasonable expectations.
I don't want to call it unreasonable. Because the topic of consumer behavior has become I've become very fond of it. I would look at it as a number of streams of wishes, desires, demands that kind of all come to us at the same time, and we then end up building an expectation that may not be realistic because we have those ideas of, for instance, what is natural, and we think it has to be happening on a meadow, biogramma, and no chemicals are included at all. And we have this idea of what that is supposed to mean. And at the same time, we do buy crisps and snacks and sweets and so on and so forth. And we don't quite manage to bring those things together. So I don't want to call it unreasonable, but I think we have a lot of ideas of what all of these concepts are supposed to mean. We are then bombarded with messages on social media where they are telling you an avocado makes you pretty and healthy and so on. And we end up building up these ideas that don't really work together. I don't know if that really makes sense, but that's what I'm observing, that we have ideas that don't really fit together. We know there is a global food chain. We know things need to be processed and produced in large companies, corporations, etc. We know that this is important to ensure food security. and availability. At the same time, we would like to be able to buy our food from the farmers market, but it's not supposed to be very expensive. So there's too many concepts that are not possible to fit together all at once.
Right. Maybe then a final question, Sophie, and it's a shame we haven't got more time. Your slide about trust, obviously on the one hand you have the public authorities like the governments and other agencies on the one hand, and then all the other players in the food chain, manufacturers, obviously retailers and farmers. To what extent is there now, we just reached a tipping point now where without any particular pressure or whatever, the players in the food value chain realize now they have to make more of an effort to inform their consumers in a way maybe that's beneficial to both sides, because maybe the more knowledgeable a consumer is about what he or she is buying and consuming, the more maybe understanding he or she has about what goes into what they're consuming.
That's actually really interesting, because that's part of what we measured when we looked at trust. We didn't just ask people directly how much trust they have, because it's a far too elusive concept and people wouldn't know how to deal with it. We also measured something that is called beliefs about trustworthiness of these actors. And it basically has 3 different areas. One is about care. How caring are they for the people? One is about competence. All of the actors rank very high on competence. So people really feel that those actors know what they're doing. But the most interesting result that we had was the 3rd dimension, openness. And it came out as the most relevant for building trust. And basically openness, the way we measure it and the way it's derived from science, is about providing the relevant and the right information, being open in what you're doing, and being honest. And I found that was such a profound kind of result, that this is what helped people build trust. Be honest about what you're doing. Don't sugarcoat it. Do tell people that sometimes you need the big farms, the ones where you have 10,000 cows next to one another. But talk about it, give people the information, because they want to feel like they are knowledgeable on stuff, that they are in control and they can make that decision. But it's up to them, because you were honest in what you did and the information you gave. And I thought that was a really powerful thing to maybe even finish the whole trust record talk with.
Well, that's a great note at which to finish this part of the program. Treat the consumer as an adult. So I think basically what we're saying in so many words. We have no more time, unfortunately, Sophie. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, and thank you for your presentation. And see you soon.
Thank you so much.
And now we move on to the panel debate. What role can consumers play in the implementation of the EU Farm to Fork strategy? We're going to be trying to address, we will address a number of questions, such as how can consumers participate in innovating and improving the food system? What does consumer centricity mean in practice? And how can consumer-centric innovation support the EU Farm to Fork strategy? And how can innovation help maintain and increase consumer trust in food, as we've just been hearing from Sophie? To answer these questions in about space of about an hour, quite a task, I have a wonderful panel to help me in this process. Sabine Jülicke, Director of Food and Feed Safety Innovation, Directorate General for Health and Food Safety at the European Commission. Welcome, Sabine. Nigia Makubodova, who's Executive Vice President, Growth and Innovation at Danone. Welcome, Nigia. And last but not least, Gerda Funekes, Executive Director of the Netherlands Nutrition Center. Gerda, welcome to you.
Morning.
So in that order, maybe I can invite Sabine first to give your opening remarks, and whether you want to react to what you've already heard from the previous speakers, or whether just launch into your own intervention. The floor is yours, Sabine.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Paul and colleagues on the panel. No, I've already heard lovely things about consumer trust, and I'm dying to develop further on that. First, from the Commission's point of view, I want to give you a bit of a flavor around the Farm to Fork strategy. So you have certainly all heard about the Green Deal of the European Commission that we are proposing with various work strands on various industries and activities. And one of them is the EU Farm to Fork strategy. because really the European Commission is committed to play a leading role in the transition towards sustainable food systems. We have made the analysis, not only us, many other bodies around Europe, around the world have made the analysis. We understand we have to transition into more sustainability. That's why we adopted the Farm to Fork strategy back in May, also with the idea of making the Farm to Fork strategy and the actions as part of the recovery in the COVID crisis. So we understand it that way, as recovery tool, as opportunity for many. And we have developed really around 3 dimensions of sustainability. Clearly the environmental dimension, environment, climate, very much in the forefront of the Green Deal, but also the economic dimension for producers, but also for consumers, in brackets, affordability of food. And last but absolutely not least, the social dimension. And when I think about consumers, it means a lot about consumers' health, bringing the opportunity that consumers easily choose healthy diets for themselves, because we know that we are facing quite a nutrition crisis in Europe with many premature deaths subject and due to unhealthy diets. So the Farm to Fork strategy contains quite a number of measures and activities to promote healthy and sustainable food consumption. So now I focus a little bit more on the consumer, but to be absolutely clear, the strategy is about everybody in the food system along the chain. And there are requirements on food processing, on retailers, and obviously we want to target the consumer, because let's be honest, if the consumer is not motivated, is not interested, is not willing to move in the interest of their own health predominantly, but also in the interest of the environment and other factors. So if the consumer is not ready to move along, we will really have problems implementing a more sustainable food system. So the consumer is key. The consumer needs to be empowered, wants to be empowered. They want to act responsibly, and they want to really make the best choices for themselves and the planet. We see that, and we have heard that from Sophie as well. So there are a couple of measures that the Commission is proposing. For example, stimulating food reformulation, where we simply want to restrict promotion of foods that are high in salt, sugar, or certain fats. And we want to do that by setting nutrient profiles. Another key instrument for consumers is clear, comprehensive food information. So what the Commission wants to propose and will propose is mandatory harmonized front of pack nutrition labeling. So something simple, snappy, informative for all the consumers. And over time, here we have a timeline of 2024 in our mind, really also propose a sustainable labeling framework where maybe at a glance will be able to have a comprehensive idea about the sustainability of the food. In our mind, that would contain information around the healthiness of the food, but possibly also environmental aspects or animal welfare aspects or the origin of the food. So these are things that, we want to feed into that label. So over time, what we are proposing is to provide more information, but we don't want the consumer to be left alone. The ultimate aim is really that the food environment is changed. That's why we also address retailers, because we want really through a code of conduct, a really responsible business and marketing practice from the retailers view, to make it much easier for the consumer to choose healthy, to choose sustainable, and to link their motivation with their actual behavior. Maybe last word, innovation. Innovation is important. Research and innovation are key enablers. We know that, we understand that. And the Commission has really put out a very ambitious proposal also in terms of financial support of 10 billion under the Horizon Europe, really to intensify research into the direction of more sustainability, to develop and test solutions, and to overcome barriers. So with this, I would like to close and give the chance to the others as well to have opening remarks. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Sabine. You managed to put a lot into 5 or 6 minutes there, so I'm very impressed by that. I have many questions for you, but I will reserve them until we finish hearing from the other speakers, as you say. So it's my great pleasure now to turn over to Nigia. Over to you. Unmute Nigia, please. There you are. Now we can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. Yes, hi, good morning, and sorry for making noise in the background, Sabine, while you were speaking. Something fell. Very happy to participate this morning in this panel. The reason why we were so keen to be part of this conversation is because the topic of this morning is very close to the DNA of Danone. It's very close to what we do and what we believe in as a company. In Danone, very often we talk about food revolution. Food revolution is happening now. People are realizing that there is no future unless we shift the way we eat and drink to the more sustainable options, to the options which are not competing with the resources of the nature, but on the contrary, nourishing and making it sustainable and delivering for the future generations. And at Danone, we chose to embrace the ongoing food revolution rather than opposing it, fighting with it. And we make it part of our company, working with our brands, because the brands are the best means to educate and to engage consumers in the knowledge and understanding of the future and the impact. We work with our colleagues through the many alliances and collaborations. We support our farmers. We work with many partners in academia, in legislation, and finally, we listen and we engage with our consumers. Because we do believe that this revolution must and will lead to a healthier and more sustainable eating habits. Habits in line with our planet can produce and our soil can regenerate, while promoting a balanced diet. We talk about diet which is regenerative, which is flexitarian, which is diet which is giving health to people, but also not compromising the health of planet. In Danone is a company which is more than 100 years old. For years, our mission has been bringing health through food to as many people as possible. It has a very important element, first of us being a local company, and we never talk about ourselves as a global company. We always describe ourselves as a multi-local company. The reason is because local, the habits, the eating habits and the diet habits are local. The reason is because we do believe in sovereignty of the food solutions. We do believe in the power which farmers have to provide nations with the better food solutions. And we always talk also about our frame of action, which is One Planet, One Health. One Planet, One Health, which is bringing us all together and making us part of the one diverse and the united universe, where health of people cannot be brought at the expense of the health of the planet. During the ongoing crisis of the COVID, we saw big changes in the consumer behaviors. And if I was to summarize it into one sentence, that is a strong desire to have local sovereignty when it comes to food. There is a growing recognition of the food cultures playing a very important role in the future. and the food security is becoming the number one concern about among consumers and among people. Accelerated global political and economic fragmentation worldwide is also triggering deep and long-term trend of rethinking food systems towards more local, more reinforcing their national food sovereignty. And finally, the clear evidence is that people are asking, as citizens of the countries, but also as consumers, they are asking to regain control of their food by opting for more local, more transparent, and yet affordable food choices. Hence, everything you are doing, Sabine, with Farm to Fork, everything you are doing, Gerda, with legislation on raising understanding of the nutritional values of different diets is so close to heart of us at Danone, and hence I was so happy to participate in today's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Livia. Wonderful. I now turn to Gerda. Over to you, Gerda. You have the floor.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, congratulations, Sabine, also on this really, really good strategy. I think it's very impressive and much needed. And with the changes, I mean, half of the population in Europe has overweight, many diseases related to what we eat. Also the climate issue, so it's urgently needed. In addition to what you have been explaining so far, and which I fully support, the empowerment of the consumers to do something and to go from motivation to intention to behavior change. I'd also like to make a plea on changing the food environment, because I'm responsible in the Netherlands for nutrition communication. I'm also leading the EFNA, European Public Health Nutrition Alliance, which are the European nutrition centers. So we're responsible about informing people, giving them tools, websites, apps, etc., to make it easy, either directly to consumers or through healthcare professionals. But what we see is that individual approach is one thing, but the environment has to be supportive of it. And at the moment, the environment in Europe is not supportive, really, of not making it easy to eat healthy and sustainable. I always say that we live at the moment at a kind of food temptation island. It's so easy to eat something unhealthy, and you really have to search further to find a healthy choice. And that's something that I'd like to be, I think that should be emphasized even a bit more when we develop the strategy further and implement it. Because a background to this, humans are, of course, rational, but a large part of eating behavior is done automatically. We like fatty food, we like sugary food, and also we like cheap foods and bargains. So that is, I think, the challenge, to make sure that the healthy choice, the sustainable choice, are really the easy choice, the tasty choice, and the affordable choice, so that we reach all Europeans and lift them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gerda. We're going to move to questions from the audience very soon. Just to remind all of you, the hundreds of people watching us, that now is your opportunity to start feeding in your questions using the chat function at the bottom of your screen. And while you're doing that, I have a number of questions. First question back to Sabine. There's a wonderful strategy you've been sketching out. Let me ask you a slightly maybe awkward question, in the sense that to what extent do member states recognize and accept the role of the European Commission in this area, or do they still say we're basically talking about health issues ultimately, and that's a member state area? We're not too keen on having the European Commission interfering in what we do domestically. Sabine.
No, thank you for that question, Paul. And indeed, I mean, it's the Commission putting out the strategy, and it is just currently very much debated in Council and in Parliament. And we have Council conclusions, which is, if I may say, a first mirror of the reception of the ideas. And indeed, I mean, the council conclusions are very, very positive vis-à-vis the strategy. And I mean, the focus is not health only. I mean, I picked up quite a number of actions that will support consumers in healthy choices. It is not amounting to a full-blown health policy. This being said, I mean, there are quite a number of reflections in parallel due to the COVID crisis, you know, how to strengthen the support role of the European Commission in actual health matters. But here in the context of nutrition, it is really welcome. Member states, I mean, we will be going forward with these proposals that we will be making together with Council and Parliament. I mean, when the Commission makes a proposal, we will discuss with the co-legislator. I'm not saying it will be plain sailing. It's like in any other area. Some member states have done already considerable work. Others have maybe had less reflections. But we will surely find a constructive way forward. So bottom line, welcome has been positive in the Council. And we continue discussing. Thank you, Paul.
Right. So this positive reaction you're getting in the Council suggests also, therefore, that the issues are EU-wide. All member states more or less agree that the same issues are to be addressed. I asked the question because you did say in your intervention just now, Sabine, you made the use of the phrase nutrition crisis. Is that something that all member states seem to recognize? And then could you maybe define what you mean by a nutrition crisis?
Now, I think, Gerda has said the same. I mean, it's the plain figures on obesity and overweight and the early age that this kicks in. I mean, the diagnosis has been made everywhere across Europe and beyond. So, I mean, I think we are all in the same reflection, looking for solutions. And it's clear nutrition and more healthy diets is one of the keys to the solution. It's not the only one, by far not. So there's ample opportunity if you want for national, regional and local policies and really local initiatives beyond this. But I think on the diagnosis that we have a nutrition crisis in terms of obesity and overweight, and also that we have a nutrition crisis on about 10-15% of our population that is not able to afford a quality meal every second day. Also, this crisis is very much on our radar, and it is not by chance that we have, food banks popping up in basically any place in Europe, because there is a need for it. So we have issues on the very different end of the spectrum. So there is plenty to do, including on European level.
Thank you, Sabine. Turn to you, Nigya. You also used a quite striking language. You said a food revolution is happening and that Danone has chosen to embrace it rather than fight it. But you also say that consumers want to regain control. How does a company like Danone or other members of the food industry ecosystem, if you like, how do they help consumers regain control?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, there is a revolution, and because consumers are aware that there is a very strong link between the food they eat and their health, as well as the health of the planet. And it was interesting also to observe that during the lockdown, these trends exacerbated. McKinsey & Company did research on asking consumers how do they make choice of the food they buy. And it was striking to see that there was a sharp increase in the number of people which reported that when they're making a choice, they look not for the taste profile, because this is given. It became like the entry point that you should be satisfied with the taste of the food you're buying. But they're looking overall at a more experience and more natural and organic products. So 22% of people, which is a huge shift, started asking and looking actively for the organic and natural food solutions which they buy. And 19%, which is again a sharp rise, especially among the older generations, which are looking for the products which are sourced sustainably. So people are taking time to search for sustainably sourced food solutions. And this is an important element which we as a consumer company cannot ignore. We should embrace and we should build our portfolio having in mind these big shifts and these big desires of people to find foods which are not only providing taste and cheap calories, as Gerda was saying, because unfortunately there is still a lot of this desire to look for the cheap calories, thinking that it's the best way to feed. But there is a rise in the people expectations from the food experiences, from the solutions which we give, which will be bringing the health to them and to their family. As a company, we also do a lot of the consumer listening. So we partnered with a company named Bloom in doing the social listening, and there are 4 top conversations which are happening currently as we speak. People are talking about planetary diet, and there is a huge rise in the vegan and vegetarian diet options, and flexitarian is becoming a norm of life for many, many people. So you asked me how Danone is responding. We are responding by actively shifting our portfolio and promoting the flexitarian diet and increasing the part of our portfolio which is plant-based foods solutions. We are actively working on giving people options which would satisfy their taste buds, which delight them, but at the same time will be good for the planet. People are looking, the second most prominent conversation is about choosing natural. The transparency of the ingredients, and that's where the labeling is playing such an important part, is becoming increasingly important for people when they make choice of the brand of the food they buy. They want to know, they want to trust people behind their food. The trust element, as Sophie was saying in the previous session, is becoming increasingly more important. And again, what Danone can do, we always were, but we are becoming even more increasingly locally produced, locally served, and getting to even we are shifting our operating model to go for the local first dynamic in the way we structure the company and in the way we operate. And the way we build our brands as well, because we do believe that people, when it comes to food, it's becoming very personal conversation, and people in the local communities, they know best. The third conversation is about people behind the food, which is the farmers. And you talked about these big farms and the farms where you have a personal almost connection and you can know who exactly is behind it. And again, at Danone, we have a number of activities which are supporting the local farmers. To mention one, for example, is a recent activity by Blidina brand, which is the first diet in France, which is partnering with local farmers of pears to prevent the distinction of Williams pears from France, which is under the risk of being totally gone from the biodiversity of the country. So promoting and raising understanding of the role the biodiversity is playing for farmers, partnering, educating them, it's what we do a lot for promoting this food sovereignty. And finally, food as a medicine. People understand that the body and mind are connected. I mean, I think we all felt it especially during the first lockdown. And the food is playing an important role, and it's a comforting, but it's also nourishment, which is nourishing your mind. And again, at Danone, we are very mindful about shifting our portfolio into the more nutritionally rich and nutritionally nourishing and healthy diets, which we can give to people as a choice. So, as a conclusion.
Yes. Okay. No, I think that's fine for now, Niga, because time's pressing. And I have a question back to you now, Gerd, if I may. I'd like to delve a bit deeper into what you said in your opening remarks. You did say that the environment it's not easy to eat healthy and sustainable. You said the consumers are rational, but they also eat out of habit. And you went on to talk also about the very important issue, which we're kind of touching on every now and again, about affordability. Consumers either expect or have no choice but to want cheaper food or cheap food. So how do we improve that situation, given all the elements of the analysis that you sketched out when you first spoke? How do we improve things going forward?
Yeah, I think also building on what Sophie Hieke said, consumers see sustainable food as healthy and sustainable as one thing. People don't choose one day healthy, the other day sustainable. No, it has to be integrated. So that's one important thing to take into account. And then coming back to the food environment, yeah, we have to make it easier for people to make those choices. And if I look at the farm to fork strategy, there are lots of elements in it to make the food environment better. For example, there's the opportunity to do something with food prices, play with VAT, there are actions on food composition, food reformulation, and making requirements to claims. Only on the healthiest products they can make nutrition and health claims. Food labeling, of course, the front of pack system that's being developed. Food provision on schools, it's a very important one. But also, of course, you can go much broader, healthy food in hospitals, but I would say restaurants, the whole out-of-home area at the moment. That is really my biggest worry. That although we have, of course, a temporary dip due to COVID, the places where you can still buy foods outside are not the healthiest ones. And when going back to normal, I would like that the new normal is really restaurants, takeaway, where the healthy choice is the easy one. So with vegetable standards, with vegetarian choices, we need support on that. So if I look at farm to fork, where I can see some improvements, is that quite a lot of the measures seem to be voluntary so far. So the question is, to what extent does it work? But yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, if we all push in the same direction, it could work. What I got from an analysis from EPI, I should say, they looked at all the policy measures that the countries have, and they plotted against what you should do to make a most healthy food environment. And they say, well, what's actually missing a little bit is actions in the area of food promotion. Because what we see at the moment, that the budget for companies, retailers to promote unhealthy food is like, well, at least 30 times bigger than the whole budget for the promotion for healthy foods. And if I look at retail, for example, I'm from the Netherlands, and quite recently there was a report, and most of the promotions are for unhealthy foods. So it's beer, crisp, etc. And that would require some attention to make sure that the places where we come most often to buy healthy food, that they really push us in the right direction.
Thank you, Greta. I'm now going to turn to questions from the audience, and to remind the audience, now is the time, now or never, to put your questions to our panel. The first question is actually addressed to you, Sabine. It's from Mikkel Kofod-Nørgaard, who's regional coordinator of the World Fair Trade Organization Europe. Question is as follows: will the sustainability of pricing and labor conditions amongst producers for farmers be included in the scope of sustainability? Fair prices for farmers within and outside the EU for the products placed on the EU market is one of the pillars of sustainability, is often a necessary condition for environmentally sustainable production methods. Sabine.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It's super relevant. And as I said, the economic dimension of sustainable food systems is very much on our radar. So obviously, being Europe, we have a lot of European tools that we would like to use. I mean, I'm speaking about the Common Agriculture Policy or the Common Fisheries Policy, or research policies. But indeed, you're very right. I mean, social and economic considerations extend beyond Europe. And that's also why the objectives of the Farm to Fork strategy will be part of Europe's conversation with our trade partners. And what is very reassuring is that sustainability as a topic, including the economic sustainability, is very much on the radar also of other countries and other nations around the globe. So I think that is really a wave here and a discussion. We might not immediately agree on all the measures that we need to take to tackle the issue, but the diagnosis is not so uncommon and not so unsimilar. So in that sense, it is very much on our radar. I want to say a few things around the food environment and the behavior of various players. We spoke a lot about the consumers. We know that for a different food environment, we need really corporations, businesses to take on the same concept. And that's why we want to propose a corporate governance framework where really sustainability is part of the corporate strategies. And for me, that would include also strategies when importing ingredients or when importing food commodities. The same, I spoke about the EU Code on Responsible Business and Marketing Conduct for companies. Clearly, to me, that extends into all activities of their trade, be it import or export. We are clearly more at the beginning of a journey than at the end point. This we have to recognize, but it is important that all players recognize that we need to start the journey and start doing it for themselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabine. A question addressed to you, Nigia, from Mads Frederick Fischer-Muller, who's a professor of food policy at Scotland's Rural College. So how can governments aid businesses in your efforts towards more sustainable diets? Can governments do more than simply just, quote unquote, do dietary guidelines, etc.? Are public sector partnerships a relevant path forward, or is Danone too big for that to be relevant? Nigia. Unmute Nigia, please.
It's host, yes. Thank you for the question. And simple answer would be no one is big enough to do it on his or her own. We all operate in a very interlinked and interconnected environment. The partnership between the private sectors and the governments and World Health Organization and any other and all other bodies which operate in the environment and which influence the way people choose what they eat and drink, we must partner, we must work together, and we must raise the awareness of the impact of the food, impact of the farming, impact of the way we produce on the health of people and the health of planet. So Danone is actively engaging in a conversation with the governments and with different coalitions, and we are proud that and happy with the support which we are getting. Can it be done more? Of course, there is always a way to do more, but we're sure that raising the awareness and having these collaborative conversations will definitely put us and is putting us on a good track.
Thank you, Nigia. A question from Monsieur or Madame Anonymous, I'm not quite sure the gender. It's an address to all speakers. What kind of innovations do we need to change the food environment, as Gerda has advocated in her opening remarks? And I remind you that the commissioner himself in his address to us did say research, he could not stress strongly enough the importance of research and innovation. So maybe Gerda, over to you first.
Yeah, I just answered the areas, but you mean specific innovations that I would see in this area?
Yeah. Specific, I suspect it means specific innovation. It's not my question, but let me interpret it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can think about it.
Yeah, I would support very much all innovations that help consumers step by step to go closer to dietary guidelines. And that sounds very simple, but it's absolutely needed, because a large part of the population is quite far from the recommended intakes in terms of fruit and vegetables, fibers, etc. So innovations that move in that direction without introducing too much salt and sugar, that are the key innovations that we need.
Thank you. Sabine or Nigia, anything to add to that?
Maybe I just give you examples, because I'm here representing the company which does a lot of innovation, and maybe I just give a few examples. So I completely support what Gerda is saying, and I believe that it's important that innovation helps people to build trust in what they eat and trust in what they are buying. So if I give an example of how partnership with the startups, with the academia can help, is I would like to give one example from Danone. Is we are partnering with a company which is named How Good, in putting artificial intelligence and the data in the heart of the way we formulate products, so that the formulation of the product gives a transparency of the environmental footprint of the product which people are buying. It's a breakthrough in the way we innovate. It's putting us at the forefront of the way we look at the formulation and the ingredients list of the products. And gradually it will help also to ensure that people know exactly what is the footprint they are leaving behind when they are choosing products on the shelf.
Thank you. Sabine, anything to add before I move to the next question?
Yeah, I would really like to see this much wider. Of course, we understand, as Gerda presented, the food environment for the consumer. But I mean, behind every food, there is a lot more that the consumer, in all fairness, will never be able to see. So there is a lot of scope for innovation, for example, by which fuel we use when we transport food, by, which means of transport. Which means of pest control do we employ to bring the apple to the supermarket? So there is a lot of scope for innovation, for example, to look for more environmentally friendly plant protection products or pesticides, if you want, or look for ways of keeping animals in such good husbandry conditions that we lead less antimicrobials. So for me, there's a huge scope of innovation in the forefront, and I mean, any research is absolutely welcome. And the Farm to Fork also addresses this type of changes that the consumer wants. Less antimicrobials, less risky pesticides, less fertilizers going to the environment, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of scope for innovation there. So in the end, the consumer doesn't have to think in the supermarket, am I now buying a product which has been produced with more or less pesticides, with more or less antimicrobials, because the entire system in the forefront has changed to the more sustainable approach.
Thank you, Sabine. A question addressed again to all of you on the panel from Nick Sigrimis, who Professor AUA. Sustainability criteria cannot be worldwide the same, because what is easy in the north may not be the same, have the same importance in Africa. So each pillar must have a locality significance parameter, he says, Nick. And the question is how we face such a thing in a globalized economy and food system. Very good question. Who wants to attempt an answer to that one? Sabine, please. Yes, and then again.
No, I mean, I think this is a very, very, very really important question. And I must say, even for us in Europe, I think we have not yet fully fixed, what is sustainability for us. I mean, if I ask you, Gerda, I will get a different answer than from Paul. I think we all have a different inclination of what is important in sustainability. So what the Commission is proposing is that we really work on a legislative framework for sustainable food systems. Sounds a bit dry, but what it is really, in essence, that we define what are the most important sustainability criteria for us in Europe here and now. And I'm saying that deliberately because in 10, 15 years' time, that might be different. In other parts of the world, this might be different. But I'm convinced that in these criteria that we would like to develop together with society and their representatives in the Council and the Parliament and in stakeholders' organization, that we will find a lot of common ground also with others worldwide. Might not be exactly the same, but I'm convinced there will be quite a bit of common ground on which we can work in a globalized context. So there will be nuances, I'm sure, but I think we have to start, for us in Europe, to start with, and then also, frame innovation of the future in light of such sustainability criteria. Once we have defined for ourselves what is important, I think then we can also send the message to innovation and say, we don't just want any innovation, we want innovation that supports the objectives that we have framed through these sustainability criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabine. Nika, you want to come in?
Yeah, maybe just to build on what Sabine is saying, because it's exactly in the heart of the belief of that Danone. We need to find a way to build a global scale for innovation, for technologies in a way which is highly relevant to the local environment. And that's objective number one, because we have to deliver against the sustainability issues and challenges in the local communities, in the local countries. It cannot be one size fits all. At the same time, we should recognize that some countries are a lot more advanced, and therefore we can bring the learnings and we can bring the education and ask and support the countries and industries in other countries to get to this level and to get to this level of understanding and advancement.
Thank you, Nika. Do you want to add something, Gerda?
Not specifically, no, thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Right. Our next question is from Paula Henrique, the Senior Consultant, Business Development, Food and Nutrition, Sustainability and Development, has quite a job title, to everybody on the panel. Another aspect of food and health is about the food experience. And I'm afraid, says Paula, the majority of consumers have gotten used and addicted to taste, textures, etc., given to food via artificial elements, as she calls them, etc., in food production, and not easy to be reproduced when eating fresh and healthy at a regular home kitchen. How are we going to address this aspect of food production? Maybe that's a question for you, Gerda, really.
Yeah, thank you. Really nice question. Thank you for that. Yeah, there at the moment even some hypotheses that the texture of food is and the eating speed is a major contributor to becoming obese, actually, because a lot of the food that like sweet drinks and snacks that we eat very quickly because they're soft, etc. Before you know it, you have a lot of calories. Whereas would you eat the same amount of food in the form of vegetables or fruit, you would have a huge pile and you wouldn't be able to eat it. So that's really interesting, and there's lots of research going on at the moment to entangle that and to see how we can use that in food innovation. Maybe have some new structures, much more. How do you say that? Crispiness, etc. That it's more sort of filling than it is now. And from a nutrition communication point of view, I'd like to add also the importance of being able to cook a meal, to prepare a meal, to know where your food is coming from. What we call food literacy. That is, there's room for improvement, I would say, in Europe. It differs per country, but it's important to start early, for example, in schools, that children know what's healthy, sustainable, where it comes from, and that they're able to prepare a meal. But also for adults that at the moment are maybe not so food literate and cannot cook meals very well, there's a huge opportunity for improvement.
Thank you, Gerd. Anybody else in the panel want to come in? If not, I'll move to the next question. Okay, the next question. Oh, you want to come in, Sabine? Sorry.
Just very briefly, I mean, exactly what Gerda explains, there is plenty of scope for national health policies, you know, to address exactly this, because you have to start early, you have to start close to the consumer, and, you know, education. I mean, there is a lot of scope still for national policies to address these aspects.
Okay, thank you. And briefly, Negia. Yes.
Just one add, and the innovation plays a big role, because the same taste profile can be delivered by the food companies with a much healthier ingredients, less sugar, natural sweeteners, and this is the work streams which we all are driving together, eventually to give people a choice of food which is tasty but equally is healthy.
Thank you, Negia. I get a message to our audience. We're running out of time, so now or never really to ask your questions to the panel. The next question is, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous has come back. A question to all of you on the panel, if you choose to answer it. What is your reaction to the call for shorter supply chains issued by Commissioner Wojciechowski? Will these help change the food environment? Who would like to answer that question? Shorter supply chains.
If I may, I mean, shorter supply chains are surely one element in the solution. I mean, we heard it from all the panels, so to say, what the consumers are interested in. They want to understand and know the people behind the food, if I understand you well, Nia. So there is an interest, there is scope, there is a business model for producers who want to maybe sell themselves or via very short supply chains. So it is surely part of the solution. And yes, I mean, maybe not in 100%, but for some sizable part, it will help to change the food environment. It is surely one avenue to be pursued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agree.
Okay. Negia, yeah.
And from a business perspective, shorter supply chain means better profits and a better business model, and therefore ability to reinvest back into the brands and the education and back into sustainable sourcing and sustainable agriculture.
Okay, thank you, Negia. A question now from Christoph Dixons, Global Public Affairs Manager and Waste Warrior, which is a fantastic job title. Consumer-focused innovation on food also comes through more intuitive, clearer, and harmonized product expiry dates. 10% of all food waste, says Christoph, in Europe is linked to misunderstanding or misinterpretation of these expiry dates. A question for Sabine and Negia, but I'm sure Gerda can also join in if she wants to. Who should be the main driver behind better expiry dates, industry or policymakers? Maybe Negia, you can go first. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
I think, as always, and with all the previous questions, it's a partnership. It cannot be either or. We need to work hand in hand together. One example I can give to you is at Danone, we know that there is a best before date on our product, but often these products are good after. And having these two dates on a pack will help people to decide whether it's time to throw it out of the fridge or it's still good to eat and enjoy the product because it's perfectly safe, but maybe it's already past the best before date. So
thank you, Negia. I cut you off, Sabine. Over to you.
No problem. No, I mean, the European Commission has founded, so to say, the EU platform on food losses and food waste, and we have worked a lot in partnership with governments, with stakeholders, with industry, on identifying, the main actions that we would need to pursue to really reduce food waste. And indeed, what the person asking the question has put here is correct. I mean, we know that a lot of food is wasted in the household, and about overall 10% is indeed due to misunderstanding of date marking. So we know it's an area for action. What the Commission will do, we will propose a revision of the EU rules on date marking. So clearly the regulator will take it on. It's a harmonized field, so we have all the same rules across Europe. We clearly need the businesses to look into their date marking practices as well, because there is also a bit of how should I say, improvement possible, or in determining the date. I'm not saying in the marking, because that will be determined by the regulator, but in determining the relevant dates. And then we come again into consumer understanding, consumer education, and giving consumer also the confidence of looking into a product that is past its best before date and still making an educated decision that it's still very good to eat. So I mean, there is plenty of work on all fronts, and we are very, very reassured, by the repercussions everywhere. The Combating Food Waste initiative has. I mean, there's hardly any community around Europe that is not thinking about food waste and how to cut it. And we know that many consumers are thinking for themselves, how can I basically better my behavior? So we are very reassured. We will be measuring food waste in Europe from next year on. We will have excellent data very soon, and that will allow us also to go forward on a broader front in terms of policy making, because we all want to adhere to the UN goal by half food waste by 2030. And we will do everything we can from a regulator's point to make this as smooth as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabine. Would you like to come in, Gerda?
Well, I'd like to build on that. I think food waste is a really interesting area, and also something that is giving energy to people because they can do something. No one likes to reduce to throw away foods, and by managing it better, that they can feel sort of accomplishment, but also save money. And in the Netherlands, we have built quite a number of tools, which we'd love to roll out also in the rest of Europe, that make it easier for consumers to reduce food waste. For example, measuring cups to cook the right amount of rice and pasta. Very simple, but very effective.
Thank you very much. We still have questions coming in, but maybe as of now, I maybe not oblige everyone on the panel to address each question. Another question from Anonymous. The follow-up on the short supply chain question. The Farm to Fork strategy asks farmers to address a number of challenges and deliver on consumer expectations for food to be healthy, sustainable, affordable, etc. But how do we get consumers to work for the farmers? How do we drive consumers to make choices that help the farmers deliver what they are supposed to? Maybe one or two of you maximum could come in on that one. Any volunteers? So actually, turning things around, how can we help the farmers? Nigia.
If I start, I think if I talk about the brands, the best way we can help farmers is to make sure that the brands which are standing for more than just the taste, they have a mission, because people more and more choose to buy the brands which stand more than just the product. They want to relate to the values of the brand. So as a marketeer, I think it's our job as an industry to build those big manifestos for the brands which are relying on a responsible farming and giving people emotional, strong reason to choose those brands.
Thank you, Nigia. Unless anybody wants to come in, I'll move on to what will be the final question from Martina Beyer, who's a master's student at the Vrije Universiteit at Amsterdam. What about reducing meat consumption at the EU level? For the sake of climate change mitigation and health improvement of consumers, this would seem like an accurate policy direction. What is the potential of EU law to go in this direction? And what is the potential for innovation and marketing to drive this change instead? I see we temporarily lost Sabine, but maybe one of the other panelists could tell us how we become more vegetarian or less of a meat-eating community. Nigya, and then Gerda.
Start with the consumer angle, and Gerda can build the legislation. From a consumer angle, is giving meal solutions and food solutions which are plant-based and delivering on the taste profile and the texture profile and the whole experience with the nutritional richness of the product. This is a cornerstone of the strategy of many food companies, which are more and more developing plant-based solutions. And it's also part of the strategy of Danone. As I mentioned in the beginning, we put a lot of emphasis of driving plant-based dairy alternatives, and our brand Alpro is a leading brand which is innovating a lot and bringing plant-based solutions for otherwise yogurts and milks and other parts, giving people choice, because I think what's important is that we raise awareness and we give the choice, but the choice should not be the compromise. Choice should be equally tasty and equally nutritious as a meat and animal alternatives to food.
Right. Gerda, I'm going to give the last word to you from the nutrition angle.
Yeah, it's very much a question for Sabine, of course, but I think there's certainly opportunity for EU to move people in direction of reducing meat, and the tools that are described in Farm to Fork, like being able to play around with food prices through VAT, definitely give opportunity to do that. Although, of course, there's how to link it with the common agricultural policy. Yeah? That's the challenge, of course, for the EU, how to do that. And on a positive note, we do see that the consumers, as mentioned earlier, are more and more turning vegetarian. So the movement is there. It's something that exists already, and the EU could push that further.
Thank you very much, Gerda. We've run out of time, unfortunately. As always, discussions are fascinating, but we don't have time to cover every single angle of the debate. But thank you all. We obviously lost Sabine, which is a pity. I'd like to thank her personally, but thank you, Sabine, as well, for your intervention. Thank you, Nigya, and to thank you, Gerda. Extremely interesting conversation. And I very much hope the audience appreciated it as well, which I'm sure they did, given the number of questions that came through. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. And now, as my job is to tell you all in the audience that we now have a networking break. We will reconvene at 11:45 to be back on time. And as you'll see, after this networking break of 25 minutes, we'll have 3 interactive breakout sessions. Session 1 on education, Session 2 on innovation, and Session 3 on innovation and public engagement. So see you all shortly, and enjoy the networking. Bye-bye.